Hello, everyone, and welcome to Market Talks, Argus weekly podcast series covering the key topics in the commodities and energy sectors. I'm Camila Fontana, Deputy Bureau Chief at Argus Brazil. In today's episode, we'll be discussing the grain and fertilizer markets in the Southern Cone with a special focus on Argentina. With me to talk about this topic are fertilizer expert Renata Cardarelli and agriculture specialist Jeffrey Lewis. So welcome to both of you. And so I'm going to start with Renata. How has the fertilizer market been behaving in Argentina? Is the country expected to see an increase in fertilizer utilization this year?
Hi, Camila. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you very much. And yes, the outlook points to an increase of fertilizer usage in Argentina. Market participants indicate that volumes could exceed 5 million metric tons this year, with some market participants estimating around 5.2 million metric tons compared to less than 5 million last year. Last year, farmers used 4.9 million metric tons. This growth is mainly due to the positive outlook for the country's 25-26 corn crop. The latest report from the USDA points to a projection of around 53 million metric tons of corn produced this season, the 25-26 season, compared to 50 million metric tons in the previous season. So at the moment, Argentina is facing low liquidity in the fertilizer import market as farmers focus on corn planting, which is progressing fast and under favorable rainfall conditions. There is some spot demand for immediate delivery, especially for urea. And nitrogen fertilizers accounted for most of deliveries last year, totaling around 3 million metric tons, or 57% of the total Argentina used during the year. Urea imports are pretty much in line this year compared to last year's figures, accounting for 652,000 metric tons from January to August, the most recent data available. Expectations are now that nitrogen fertilizer transactions will intensify between October and December. And of course, Argentinian market participants are watching very closely Brazil and the Indian market, especially the tenders India has been doing in the recent weeks.
Jeffrey, we've been hearing for a while now that Argentina is set to have a bumper wheat crop this year. What's the current situation? Do we see any problems so far?
Hi, Camila. Thank you for having me on as well. The situation is that it's looking very good for Argentina's wheat crop. As Renata mentioned before, there's been a lot of rain. It was a very rainy winter, and that's unusual for the agricultural regions in Argentina. And that has really left really good soil moisture levels across a lot of that region. And the rain has also been much more widespread. Normally, you would get it more focused in certain areas, and over this past winter, Southern Hemisphere winter, they've had rain really spread out in a much broader area. So it's looking very good. The conditions are good for, in the soil. They've been fertilizing a bit more. This is, for wheat, they use less fertilizer than for corn, as everybody knows. But so, the expectations have been good for a couple of months now because it's just kept raining and raining and raining. And so, as we are where we are now, people are still expecting a very good crop. The Buenos Aires Grain Exchange has a forecast now for 22 million metric tons for 2025-26 marketing year. And the Rosario Board of Trade is forecasting 23 million tons. And it's normal for those two to have, slightly different numbers. It happens every year. And for both of those, that would be at or near record levels. So yes, we're really expecting a good crop.
Back to Renata. In Brazil, farmers have been buying and replacing high concentration nitrogen and phosphorus fertilizers with lower concentration alternatives. Is this trend holding across the Southern Cone?
Yeah, that's true, Camila. In Brazil, farmers have been, it's quite common actually that farmers have been trying to use more fertilizers with low liquidity, low content of nitrogen and phosphate and phosphorus, especially substituting SSP, replacing MAP and urea, and using more ammonium sulfate instead of urea. This shift is driven mostly because of price and global availability. In Argentina, that's not the trend. We have been hearing from market participants that they are following what's happening in Brazil, and of course, they will be analyzing the soil, but that's not happening. So they are still analyzing, but they don't exchange, they don't trend and replace SSP and MAP and ammonium sulfate instead of urea. We know that ammonium sulfate imports in Argentina fell this year. So from January to August, the drop represented 19%, while in Brazil, it rose quite significantly, up to 52% from January to September. And in Paraguay, that's an interesting situation because Paraguay typically sources ammonium sulfate from Brazil and receiving around 10% of Brazil's imported volume between January and September this year. With greater availability of ammonium sulfate in Brazil, farmers in Paraguay have been postponing and delaying their decision of ammonium sulfate purchases for use in the second corn crop. So basically in Argentina, market participants are watching the developments and to understand what's happening in Brazil and maybe for the future to substitute. But for this season, we have not been hearing that similar pace.
And Jeffrey, do you hear of any problems in Argentina so far?
Well, yeah, actually, there have been some issues. Almost all of them related to the excess of rain. I said before that it rained a lot all over the agricultural area, and where it really rained a lot was in Buenos Aires province, especially like in the central part of that province. And Buenos Aires province is by far the most important province for agriculture in Argentina. It's the biggest producer of wheat, of corn, of soybeans, and of barley. And so the problems that we've had with the rain in Buenos Aires has been spread across all of those crops. You've had flooded fields, which has resulted in some wheat area not being able to be harvested, basically washing away fertilizer. It's also flooded rural roads, making transportation harder, making it harder for farmers to get into the fields. But this is very much restricted to just this area of Buenos Aires province. You've got all these other crops are also growing in Cordoba, in Santa Fe, and in other provinces. So it's very much focused in that area. So it's not a big problem, but it is having an impact. And for wheat, for instance, the expectations for yields are so high that even though they've lost some area that's going to be harvested, they're still thinking possibly record harvest. So it's been a problem, but it's not going to wreck the harvest or anything.
And what is the outlook for the market once the wheat crop is harvested?
Well, the harvest starts in mid-November, and loading for export generally starts in early December. And for Argentina right now, the outlook is very good. They have a lot of wheat coming in. Other producers are also expected to have very good harvests. So prices are low, near a 5-year low in global markets. Argentine wheat has been very competitive into Southeast Asia, and prices are also competitive into other regions. And for instance, Australia, which is also Southern Hemisphere harvesting around the same time, their wheat exports are going to be held up a bit by problems in the ports, basically competition with other crops that have taken up a lot of slots. And another big competitor is the Black Sea. And in the Black Sea lately, for a while now, a couple of weeks, the farmers there have been reluctant to sell. They're waiting for better prices. So if, assuming Australia can't work out the problems with the ports, and if Black Sea farmers continue to not want to sell, then Argentina could have a very good December in terms of wheat sales.
Renata, about Paraguay, soy planting for the 25-26 crop is moving forward now. And how are buyers in the Paraguayan market behaving with regard to the second corn crop?
Yeah, Camila. Well, market participants are really focused on planting soybeans in Paraguay. So producers are focused basically on work and crop field works, which it's not favorable for purchases for the next season, next corn season. So the expectations are for an increased demand of potash now in October and especially in November to supply corn crop. MOP imports in Paraguay rose this year by 6% between January and September. And we expect to see this market moving forward, especially in these 2 months to supply the next corn crop. Market participants in the region in Paraguay estimate that around 40% of Paraguay's fertilizers needs for the 25-26 corn crop still need to be dealt. So there's a lot to be negotiated this year.
Thank you, Renata. Thank you, Jeff. Super happy to have you both here. Thank you to everyone who joined us for another episode of Market Talks. All episodes of this series are available on the main streaming platforms. We'll see you next time. Thank you.